Political analyst Donika Emini. Donika, thank you so much for your time. How close, realistically, are the countries to a possible conflict, do you think?
Thanks for having me. The countries are very close to a conflict. They have been since the declaration of independence in 2008. The EU facilitated dialogue. However, it managed to fix some of the open issues between the countries, but not all. And that's why we're having issues such as the one with the car plates and the IDs. That is not something that started in July. This agreement has been negotiated once in 2012 and then renegotiated many times. The last time it was negotiated, it was in September last year when we had a similar situation happening in the north. It was even worse because we had Serbian flight jets, military jets flying over the Kosovo border. We had the Russian ambassador hand in hand with Vucic in Russia, which is one of the biggest military base in the south of Serbia, very close to Kosovo. This time, however, it became even more relevant for the media because of the war in Ukraine, because now war is in Europe. The situation is even more sensitive because we are having two parties that are barricaded. We are clearly having Kosovo, which is very much coordinated with the US and the EU to some extent, the EU member states. And then we are having Serbia, which is backed by Russia. And that's where the fears comes from. The fear is not Kosovo, Serbia. The fear is Russia versus the West, NATO, EU, and the US.
Actually, I was going to ask you about whether it's exclusively ultra-nationalists on both sides in Kosovo and Serbia. But because you're mentioning outside influences, what do Serbia's actions during the conflict in Ukraine tell us about its relationship with the outside world? I mean, some of the demonstrations in support of Russia, you almost would struggle to name another country where those kind of demonstrations would take place.
Exactly, that is the situation, Adnan. This is most concerning part. It's not an issue taking place in the Balkans. It's a geopolitical issue because Balkans has been a geopolitical chessboard for a very long time. It provides a unique opportunity for Russia to directly meddle with the West. And the Kosovo-Serbia open dispute is the one, also the case in Bosnia as well, but the Kosovo-Serbia issue is the one that is actually used by Serbia and Russia to constantly meddle with the West. What happened after February, which in my opinion is very concerning, is the way that the West and the EU particularly reacted to how Serbia refused to impose sanctions towards Russia. We did not see anything like that in Europe. We are having Serbia, which is an EU candidate country. It's considered a front runner, meaning that Serbia and Montenegro are the countries that are presumably the first ones to join the EU from the Balkans. And then you have Serbia that is deeply aligned with Russia, not only hesitating to impose sanctions, but also offering support, because we're not talking here about protests only, because that's a public opinion that Vucic has built in the past 10 years with pro-Russian narratives in the media, which he controls. But by the fact that, Serbia continues to have flights to Moscow, and it continues to hesitate to move on with the sanctions. And there have been several times that a meeting with Lavrov was announced, but it did not take place because there were a lot of reactions from NATO members in the region. And the way that the West has reacted towards this really showcases how lack of political power the EU has in the negotiating table as a key facilitator of the process, and how little they have power over Vucic, who is constantly backed by Russia in the eyes, in front of the EU. And whatever happens in the region, Adnan, does not stay in the region. It has detrimental impact in the EU directly. And that's why the EU is constantly investing in preventing war, but not normalizing the situation and not really bringing the parties closer to an end and signing the actual deal, which will end this dispute.
Donika, thank you very much indeed. Clearly a complicated situation, but really appreciate the way you talked us through it. Donika Emini in Tehran.